Okay, everyone, please come in. The panel is about to start. Please take a seat. There are also a few seats in the front left, if you like. Okay, I think we've made our point regarding the signal. Thank you. Please come in and close the door. So we're going to start now with the panel 5, Environmental Protection and Sustainable Economic Development, moderated by Katja Giebel from the Heinrich Böll Foundation.
Yeah, hello everyone, good afternoon also from my side. Welcome to this panel on environmental protection and sustainable economic development. So I would say the later the day, the closer we get to many interconnected core issues today. So we just had a panel on climate change and energy transition, and the next one will be on the rule of law and fighting corruption. And all that would match very well to discuss with our topic, as it's hard to separate those issues from one another. Yet I'm very much looking forward. We speak now about the need of nature protection that is often marginalized vis-à-vis the economic development. And we have a panel with very distinguished speakers with different backgrounds from different of countries in the Western Balkans, environmentalists and professionals from different ministries, and also one representative of the German Ministry of Ecology, to discuss the compliance with and the reinforcement of environmental legislation, which is still lacking in various areas. So my name is Katja Giebel. I'm with the Heinrich Böll Foundation based here in Berlin and working on the Western Balkan countries and also on the offices programs that we have in Sarajevo, Belgrade and Tirana. So there is enough examples of economic interest dominating nature protection in the Western Balkan 6. And it's not only the lithium mining in Serbia, now a very pressing issue. There's far more to discuss about. There's other forms of mining, also illegal mining, deforestation, dams constructions, airports in protected areas, strategic investments. And while many of us, and I sense, and we heard that also today here in the room, are quite frustrated by the very long paces that all those bigger frameworks that we relate our work to usually take. So the European integration is such, those political projects as the European Green Deal, Green Agenda, maybe even the Berlin process itself. There's also quite a fast pace in contrast to this with economic activities in the region that has sidelined the need for preserving the natural environment. So I'm very glad with us today is Alexander Treitschke to present the recommendations of his working groups in a second. And as we have, as in the previous sessions, roughly only 1 hour, this is how we proceed. I will briefly introduce our panel before I hand over to you, and then all speakers have a chance to react on the recommendations with an own input. And then we already open for Q&A, and there is one more seat waiting for your comments and questions. So Alexander Treitschke, director at PPNEA. PPNEA is a protection and preservation of natural environment in Albania, an environmental organization in Tirana, and I don't want to hide that he and his organization are our partners in Tirana, and who was there last year actually during the Civil Society Forum and during the Berlin process might remember a huge campaign called Albania is Biodiversity, and that culminated in a mural that is depicting the endangered animals at the Skander Bay Platz. Maybe you can see that. So in the middle of the town, where there is usually the constant mosaic mural of the Albanians, and opposite there was a huge picture of the endangered species. So Alexander has been involved with nature conservation work in Albania and the Balkans for more than 20 years, along with Pepinea. He is affiliated since 2004. He has a Master of Science in Biodiversity Conservation and Management from the Oxford University, and also a PhD in Anthropology. And he has been conducting interdisciplinary research connecting cultural and environmental questions. He is a rare expert on wolves, lynx, and also bears, and researches on the question how local people interrelate with those carnivores. We just spoke last week about bears not knowing and not having passports, so as environmental protection knows no borders.
Bears.
Bears.
But also beers. Expert on both.
Okay. Bears. Next to you, Eva Kracht from the German Federal Ministry of Environment, where you are heading the International and European Policy Department. In Germany, the ministry is also responsible for nature conservation, nuclear safety, and consumer protection. Also, about you, I found very quickly that it's your daily bread, that climate and environmental protection works only internationally. You studied law, and you also have a PhD on international law. You joined the Federal Ministry in 2003, working on constitutional reform, and you had been a personal assistant to the ministers Jürgen Trittin and Sigmar Gabriel. And since 2011, you are heading the unit for EU coordination. So warm welcome. I very much look forward to learn more about the German role in not only monitoring but also influencing better environmental legislation politically in the Western Balkans. Then online with us, I welcome also you, Fatjona Cinai. You are heading the Department for Climate Change in the Albanian Ministry of Environment and Tourism. You have a Master of Sciences on Industrial and Environmental Chemistry, and you are engaged in policies related to climate change and air quality on national level, and you believe in meaningful engagement of youth and academia in the national process of climate change. So warm welcome to you and greetings to Tirana. And in the middle of our panel, I welcome Ms. Shakiri. Lindita Shakiri is also heading the Department for European Union in the Ministry for Environment and Physical Planning in North Macedonia, in Skopje. You are a professional with 27 years of experience in water and wastewater sector, and having a master degree in international relations and diplomacy, and you are also a specialist in the role of small countries in the European Union. Thanks a lot for your availability and also the interest in our joint discussion. And last, on my right side, Mr. Niman Bego. Genci Niman Bego, you only recently became the mayor of Olcin, your hometown in Montenegro. You are president and founder of the Albanian party Forza Ire Demokratike, and you had been a member of parliament from 2009 until 2023. Representing the Albanian community, and you served as vice president also of the Montenegrin parliament from 2016 until 2020. Thanks a lot for your time. And without further ado, please, Alexander, present the recommendations of your working group.
Thank you, Katja. I'll try to be within the time frame. I mean, the discussions within the group were quite extensive, and environment issues and sustainable development issues are definitely not easy issues to talk about. The field is quite vast, and it includes many different components. However, I want to thank my group for the very fruitful discussions. I think we gave in our best, and we have come up with a good number of recommendations. I'm not gonna repeat them in front of you now, as you all have you have them printed. However, I'll try to have a more sort of streamlined discussion based on the main points that came out from that process. So we in the environment, or if you want to be a bit more specific, in the nature conservation community, are often perceived as organizations that tend to be in a constant battle with development on the other hand. And we are usually the ones to say no to every project, the ones that put the needs of what are perceived to be beings less relevant to people, before people. And in the light of this, what we, I think, commonly agree is that it cannot be further away from the truth. And this dichotomy that exists between environment and development isn't anything new. I mean, we have developed tools throughout the years to balance both, and we have developed frameworks to balance both. So many of the issues that we discussed were exactly around this. So we need to improve particularly the legal frameworks that have to deal or intersect with nature and environment, and to revisit existing laws. Laws are usually very good in their own direction, but when it comes to intersection with nature and environment, that's where the problems usually start. So nature needs to be streamlined in many such different laws that concern infrastructure, that concern spatial, urban planning, strategic investments, energy development, and so on. Also, when it comes to the implementation of legal frameworks and to the tools that we have at our disposal, we often, if processes are done correctly, and in particular if processes that relate to the impact that development has on environment and nature are done correctly, many of the issues that arise, usually by the voices of civil society, would not arise. In this regard, if environmental impact assessment or strategic environmental assessments are done correctly, are done with proper expertise, are not done just to tick the next box, and are done with the proper involvement of civil society and stakeholders, many of the conflicts that we witness today between development on one hand and nature conservation on the other would most likely not be there. Our group also discussed on the extensive value that the current farming practices and agricultural practices in the region have in preserving a unique cultural heritage and unique biodiversity related to this. And in this regard, we would see the upkeeping of these practices and actually their promotion in the future as quite crucial for the future, as opposed to more intensive models of farming or agriculture. The region is experiencing a boom in terms of infrastructure developments. There are more highways being built, there are more railways being built, there is more transport infrastructure, more energy infrastructure being built. And of course, this comes at a cost to nature. It comes at a cost to, particularly to connectivity of nature. And in this regard, our group is of the strong opinion that particular attention should be given to green infrastructure, to upkeeping the ecological connectivity, and to maintaining it for the long term. And to do this, of course, you have to go into issues of spatial planning, into issues of proper, as I said before, EIA and CA development, where also the issue of fragmentation and connectivity are properly addressed. So in terms of institutional setup, we all know that the institutions responsible for environment and nature are ministries related to environment and nature. However, what we see in the region, although not always, it's not always the case, is that environment is usually coupled with other sectors. I mean, you can have a Ministry of Energy and Environment, you can have a Ministry of Infrastructure and Environment, you can have a Ministry of Tourism and Environment, and while this might make sense in certain contexts, in other contexts this can produce more problems than benefits, especially when it comes to environment. And as living and working in Albania, for instance, we have the Ministry of Tourism and Environment, and what we notice is that tourism benefits a lot from environment, but it's hard to say that the other way around is happening. Our group discussed on the potential, on the possibilities and potentials and the needs to promote circular economies in the region, particularly under the aspect, as we all agree, that that needs to be done, but particularly under the angle of empowering also minorities and marginalized communities when it comes to this regard, and try to help them within this transition. And of course, since we also come from the discussion that happened in the previous group related to energy, of course, that was touched in our group as well, particularly at the interface that exists between renewable energies and nature protection, particularly biodiversity protection. And while we all agree that renewable is the future, we should also pose the question, renewable and green transition, but at what cost? And when we ask at what cost, usually it's about the location, and renewable energy projects really need to consider the effects that they can have on natural habitats, that they can have on biodiversity and fragmentation, and adequate thought and strategic thinking should go into that. The group was of the belief that there is plenty of opportunity for development. We heard in the previous panel that there was a project in Kosovo of a solar power plant development in former ash fields. So in areas like that, where you clearly see that there is benefit in landscape transformation, such project could go ahead, but definitely we wouldn't want to see wetlands being converted into solar power plants or cutting down forests to open the way for installing them. And also to also go one step back, perhaps, to ask the question, because we felt that this question is not really asked, but we are straight jumping into producing more energy from renewables, but we are not maybe posing the question before, how much energy do we actually need? And are we doing enough to best use the energy that we already have in terms of efficiency and in terms of efficiency. So these assessments need to be done before we jump into the more energy wagon. And quite this thing was in also 10, 15 years ago with the explosion or boom of hydropower development projects. They were also promoted under this green renewable energy veil and was seen as the hope, but we all saw the environmental consequences that such developments can bring. And pretty much we are witnessing that similar things are happening now. It's just the type of energy that is being changed. We're jumping into solar and wind, but still with very little consideration of the impacts that they're having on nature. Then going a bit more into the more hard issues to tackle, and of course this relates a lot to rule of law, this relates a lot to corruption. In general, the group was unanimously agreeing that environmental issues are usually, or crimes, environmental crimes and problems that arise are usually seen under an inferior angle, even when it comes to corruption issues, even when it comes to rule of law issues. And it is clear that environmental issues are rule of law issues and should be seen under that angle and should be treated as such. This would help a lot societies perceive them much better, but also institutions, courts, and other parties perceive them in a much more serious angle and take better decisions when it comes to environment. With that, I would like to conclude, but on a more positive note, because I also heard that I think it was in the morning session, that the region is not progressing also because of deep embedded problems that exist in between the countries. I think here nature can provide a very good platform for increasing collaboration and for making the point that countries can collaborate very good when it comes to natural preservation, as nature knows no borders. It's a common shared heritage for all of us, and if we want to preserve it, no one country can make it on its own. And the point you made about the bear illustrates it very well, because the bear does not need to show a passport when it crosses from one country to the other. But if we want to protect it, we have to work together. Otherwise, all the efforts of one party go in vain if the other one is not investing that much effort. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Alexander. That was very consent. Ms. Kracht, so as you are at the interface of the Ministry of Environment and the European Union, please also, we would like to hear your reflection on those guiding questions that were posed before in the agenda. So what can be done to comply with strengthening environmental legislation throughout the Western Balkan 6? How should this be done? And what role do you see for the civil society? And also, maybe the most important question to you, what role do member states like Germany have in the end to influence improvement of environmental legislation already now, when most of the states are not having opened so far the chapter 27?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to see that civil society cooperation is an integral part of the Berlin process now. It's very important to us as well. In April, we invited some civil society organizations competent on the Western Balkans issues. And I think to start on that, civil society is really needed as an advocate. The environment does not have all that many advocates. Civil society plays a very important role as an advocate, as a watchdog, but also with a lot of expertise. So also in June, my colleague traveled to the region, and we made sure that we always also interacted with civil society. So thank you for this additional chance to do just that. Well, thank you for presenting the recommendations, and what you said at the outset, I think that is at the core of the problem. The perceived dichotomy of environmental protection, nature protection, and development. And that is conceptually not the way it should be. With the Sustainable Development Goals integrate these two, and I think this is actually essential. We cannot have economic development without a sound environment. And if you look at what the World Economic Forum says on this, an meeting of economic leaders, they found that more than half of the global GDP are dependent on nature. You see different numbers on that. Some people say 80%, but I don't think the World Economic Forum is under the suspicion of being overly green in that matter. And the risks that the World Economic Forum highlighted in their global risks report this year, if you look, if they asked for the main risks for the planet, not the planet, but for the global society at a 10-year perspective, 5 out of the 10 perceived risks are environment related. So risks for the economy, risks for our societies, not risks just for nature. So this is a real economic issue, and we have not been treating it like that. Within the European Union, we've got the European Green Deal, and it is conceptualized as a growth strategy. And von der Leyen repeated that it remains Europe's growth strategy. I think we're a bit at risk of losing that perception. And if you look at the Draghi report published recently on the competitiveness issues, we have a strong focus on climate protection, also on circular economy as something integrated with the economic agenda. But then he says things like, yeah, but we might need to lower nature standards a little bit to enforce this agenda. And I really think this is short-sighted because, I mean, you just look around, we've got all these floods. That is a lot about the status of nature. Of course, pollination is an obvious one, but there are so many ecosystem services that we all depend on as a society, but also the economy, like bioeconomy, is huge and growing. Just to name a few things. So this, from the outset, we really need to change our thinking and to become more concrete on what we can do about concrete steps we can take towards the Western Balkans. Placing, giving attention to this in the process of EU accession will be very important. And we're glad that under the Green Agenda, we had a first ministerial meeting of the Green Agenda just on Tuesday in Hamburg. And in that context, we proposed to have a yearly ministerial dialogue on nature in particular to make sure that these issues are also taken on board. And another thing that we can actually do on the ground is we have a project supporting cross-border protected areas. You all mentioned that bears cross borders and water does as well. So this is something very concrete that we want to help implement, and twinning can also be a good lever to raise capacity, to give some practical support. Well, maybe I'll leave it at that for now. Glad to discuss with you further. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Then I suggest we include our online speaker, Ms. Chinaev, from the Ministry of Tourism and Environment. As you heard, there's one recommendation on decoupling the ministries, those ministries that are in charge of environmental protection from interest conflicting issues, such as tourism actually could be one of them. So first question, what is your assessment? Is there a conflict of interest within your ministry? And I'm asking in regard to the contradicting development that we see when it comes to environmental protection or economic growth. I refer to the looming large-scale investment on Albania's coast that seems a varying mix of politics and business by Trump's family investments from around his entourage, so backed by networks and investments actually of Richard Grenell and his son-in-law. And this all is only possible because the Albanian government has created the legal basis for these investments with a new nature conservation law that goes beyond EU norms and allows it to reclassify nature conservation areas for so-called strategic investments. So there's large construction projects and villas and villa complexes that actually are far removed from democratic control. So I'm just curious, what do you say on the decoupling of ministries that are in charge of conflicting areas and your assessment of this particular strategic investment project?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me even in this format. It is very important, and I'm very grateful actually that you have been resilient as a forum, that you have accommodated the event, which I couldn't prevent, which is a family issue, and prevented me to be there. Nevertheless, I would like to thank you for the invitation to be part of this panel. I really appreciate it, and I want to congratulate all of you for organizing this very important forum in addressing all the policy recommendations of the previous workshop. And sorry, can you hear me?
Very well. Yeah. We can hear you very well.
Okay. Because I'm not hearing the number one.
We can hear you very well. Could you follow us so far?
Um, Sorry. So as I was saying, and, not to take more time from this esteemed panel, I would like to go right back at your question. Actually, it is very interesting, and I sat with the previous panelist in her opinions regarding the fact that economic growth cannot be seen as just not in a sustainable way and taking into account the environment, but decoupling entirely these two sectors, economic growth and development. I think that would be actually approach that to risk and fail to recognize the interdependence of these two sectors for developing the economy of a country, but also taking into account the challenges and the environment impact on environment. So I think that the conflict is more like having a balance than decoupling entirely. Both environmental sustainability and economic growth are very interdependent, particularly, as you mentioned, in tourism, but also in agriculture, in industry where natural resources are vital assets. As for the strategic investments, I think that they can play a significant role in bridging this gap by prioritizing investments that are both economically viable, environmentally sustainable, and we can promote innovation, green jobs, sustainable industries. Strategic investments should focus on renewable energy, circular economy, sustainable tourism, which actually the Ministry of Tourism and Environment is very working towards this, the empowerment of this sector, sustainable tourism, as having the two fields there as within its field of competence. So these types of investments can drive economic growth, we think, while simultaneously protecting the environment, ensuring a resilient and inclusive economy. The goal is to move toward a model where economic growth is not at odds with environmental protection, but rather supports and is supported by it. And we can say, and we can all agree that Albania has made significant efforts in addressing the conflict between environmental protection and economic growth, recognizing that two sectors must not be seen as opposing forces, but as interdependent components of sustainable development framework. I can mention some of the legislative developments, but I think that through the report, you are already aware of the legislative developments and actually regarding the environmental impact assessment and the strategic impact assessment that are designed to ensure environmental considerations integrated international and local development plans. But to be more specific within this year, and to illustrate the fact that having two sectors within a industry helps actually to be more equal and uh, more determined to protect the other sector and promote and to promote and support the development of the other. So, for instance, we can say that knowing that the increase of tourism in Albania has put the pressure in environmental aspects, uh, we have strived and been very eager to develop legal frames that are related to circular economy, to better management of waste, establishing agency which will help managing of waste um, and sustainable approaches. So implementing the 3 Rs Also, the initiative of the government in the starting of this year to raise the fines and consider infringements regarding environmental violations as penalty penal not only fine but also as penal infringements. We can say that these are some of the examples that show our commitment and the fact that the sector of tourism has driven us to make other efforts apart the implementation of the current legislation and the approaching our legislation with EU acquis.
Thank you for now, Ms. Chinay, for your perspective as being relatively new in a ministry with of course another own history. I agree there's a balance, of course, needed between nature protection and economic growth, but yeah, I mean, also one-way roads should be pretty much avoided, and yeah. I doubt that the strategic investments that are planned right now would balance anything on the benefit of environmental protection. Let's go on for now with our next speaker, Ms. Shakiri. Thank you a lot for your assessment as being a professional with your experience. So what would you say, what steps need to be taken to increase awareness for environmental protection within public administration and among citizens from your Macedonian background?
Thank you very much, Katja. First, congratulations to the Berlin process, to the 10th anniversary, as well to all the countries who are committed to follow this process. Of course, we can just succeed if we are united. And about the increasing of public awareness, we have to work a lot. We have done a lot, but we still have to work a lot, not only we in Macedonia, but in the whole region, since the environment is not, the air in the environment is not only for one country. I mean, we are together in this process. And this is one of the challenges that we have to face with as candidate countries. And in the chapter 27, there is a lot to do about this issue, public awareness, and how to, if we increase the public awareness, I think that we will go forward with all the processes in the environment. First of all, sometimes the governments in the region, even the population, perceiving the environmental issue and all the steps that should be done in the environmental set is imposed by EU, by abroad, and in the moment when, with increasing public awareness, we will not perceive all the environmental issue as imposed, I think that we will be successful in this area. And of course, it should be done a lot in the, I mean, even since all the living conditions and the awareness for living conditions remain low and should be strengthened through many researches and public campaigns as well. And governments and the public institutions in the Western Balkans have lack of knowledge when it comes to the policy option and changes in the legislation as well, when the legislation will be enforced, how to fill all the requirements that this legislation need. So that's why I think that we need a lot of capacity development, racing campaigns for public officers and are needed in the region. As well, the civil society should have or to take a step forward and to work together with the population and with the governments, of course, and to show what is the right way. Speaking about the requirements, I think I review all of them, and many of them are feasible. And speaking about public awareness, for example, I emphasize that we have to work with the youth as well. Yes, because youth participation and engagement in nature conservation causes by means of capacity building, education programs, mentorship, funding for youth-led green actions, etc., should be feasible if we are dedicated to this.
Thank you so much. Genshiniman Bego, so I've seen that in the last posts in your social media account, you informed about firefighters from your hometown being sent to help in central Bosnia-Herzegovina, where heavy rain, we heard it already today, led to severe floods, and there's about 20 death victims last weekend. So a very good sign of regional solidarity. There's some media coverages in Bosnia-Herzegovina that see a connection between the tragedy and illegal extractivist activities. So that in that way that stone minings and wood cuttings and dams, so they made let landslides fall apart faster when the torrential rain fall. Would you say that there is a rule of law issue in this regard?
First of all, thank you, Gatia. I want to greet all of you, distinguished panelists, and all of you in this hall to congratulate or to say how thankful I am that Südosteuropa-Gesellschaft and Aspen Institute invited me to share my impressions or experience or views about Berlin process and place of civil society and think tanks in this process. Just shortly to answer, shortly because of the time. Of course that we sent 2 firefighters in Jablanica. And I'm not an investigator, but of course that the floods and the loss of lives in Jablanica has to do with rule of law. Unfortunately, my knowledge, as maybe from all people who are from Western Balkans, knows that there was an illegal quarry or places they took using stones. But you have to have in mind that also if that quarry was legal, because it can be easily legal, so somebody issue a license, etc., that thing could happen. That thing could happen just because we lack the knowledge or we don't see what can be done with when we need to prioritize decisions related to sustainable development and environmental protection.
Mm-hmm. Another question directly on the town you are a mayor now of. So you are aligning yourself with the positions of leading environmental NGOs, and regarding the saline in Ulcin, you are advocating for its protection and the prohibition of construction on the saline. And I read on the initiative of your party, you declared also so you took the decision to declare the Ulcin saline as a protected natural area of national and international importance. Was it so successful so far, and what led you to this decision, and what would you recommend to colleagues in other municipalities who are planning similar projects to speed up the process?
Very short question. No, you must have in mind all my positions. So I'm a leader of Albanian National Party in Montenegro. You must have in mind that I was a long-time member of parliament in Montenegro, now the mayor. So we have different goals. The main goal is to join as soon as possible the European Union. But the fight with Salina was like this. Central government wanted to use that land to allow a doubtful investor to build complexes for tourism. We wanted, as a local community, that area to be protected. And this fight started long ago, and this is one of my biggest successes, I can say. In 2012, I amended the law on spatial planning in Montenegro, not allowing to have construction in that area. That was the first step. Then the international community joined after. But this amendment was done by NGO called MANS. People from the region know them. So we won that fight. It was in 2012. Then the international community, of course, people who are protecting wetlands, etc., from all over Europe joined the fight. Also, the ambassador of Germany and from all other states. They were very vocative, and in 2015, somehow, the government of Montenegro changed position from insisting that the land to be used for tourism. It can be used for sustainable. And in 2016, we had another agreement to join the government, and we pressured and we agreed that this area to be a protected part of nature, because that is in competence of local community. If you declare to be national park according to law in Montenegro, it goes to the government. And this is a success story. In 2019, we made a decision in local parliament that this is a park of nature, and now we are working hardly to establish a company who will run this area. But all of this is again linked to the main focus of Berlin process: how and when we will join European Union. How and when, in what situation, and in what capacity. Are we going to be, as Montenegro, a leader of a region who is problematic, or are we really problematic, or the least problematic in this region? I remember when we are talking about, during those panels, something went all the time in mind. Thessaloniki 2003, when European Union gave the word to the region that we will join European Union. Now it's 21 years later. Berlin process started in 2014. We are late. We are going late. We having problems, but I'm not sure that those problems are so big. For the region, what maybe happened, it's not a good thing, Ukraine. After Ukraine, then European Union said, okay, we have a small group of countries. We heard, all of us, that we are just number as Netherlands, and we are not that problematic to enter. So it's on us, but also in European Union to assist us to go as much faster, maybe to set a date. Montenegro will join in 2028, Serbia, Kosovo, Albania, Macedonia, and Bosnia in 2029 or 2030, but we have problems. We need to reconciliate. That problem is, from time to time, is put under the carpet, and it's not going strongly because of the political interest. Katja, maybe I step out of the position of panelist because I wanted also to Alexander to say something more. Because maybe you can show a slide?
Please go ahead. Yeah. If the tech support could show a slide. Yeah.
What is my point here? So I don't have problem with any recommendation. They are achievable. Montenegro has emerald zoning, which is recommendation for Western Balkan countries and for the European Commission. But look at the slide. This is Montenegro. So the most developed area, and people are living in areas which are not protected. And the land zoned, people are migrating, which are protected. So we are decision makers. We are on opposite sides. NGOs, you have capability, you have resources, you have a knowledge, and you can speak what we should do, and we should listen to you.
Maybe for our audience also, so this map shows those areas
In Emerald Zone,
that
which are Nature 2000.
yeah, that are already existing, right?
And so how should we as a decision maker to explain from election to election cycle to the people that this should be done, because it's not done in 10 years, in 20 years. That's why I'm saying we should move faster. Decision should be made faster. And what was lacking from European Commission to us, investment in connectivity and in transport. We need more roads, more highways. We need infrastructure in railways, because Montenegro doesn't have, and other countries around are lacking in that. And this is, for me, my point, which I want to refer to European Commission, to Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Germany, and to you.
We just heard also in the previous panel, Verena mentioned it, that the capacity of the new growth plan, it's actually 4 billion euro in loans and 2 billion in fresh money, in not credits. So would you think this is sufficient enough? And I mean, there's always the question, conditionalize it to make really a reform impetus?
I don't want to sound cynical, but because of the urban planning, because when we talk about sustainability and development, because of the planners who planned my hometown, I might need 500 million euro just to buy land to construct a new road. So 4 billion euro, of course they are a big investment, but the need of the region are big. And we should not rely just on assistance of European Union, but just that assistance to be faster. We can create our own resources. We are more stabilized because Montenegro is using euro, Kosovo is using euro. So our finances are stable. They are not endangered that much. In Albania, also economical parameters are good. But it's how we use with time, with all our projects and our idea. Priorities should be, and one point which is mentioned before, but it's a very big problem now. We are lacking working force. We are lacking a working force. It's moving from the region, but we have a very big problem with the working force.
So you mentioned now a couple of other very important issues, the labor drain, of the reconciliation process that is needed in the region, but your last point that there's actually more and faster financial assistance needed to also maybe reflect more priority for the region as such that is lacking right now. That's quite an important point. But with this, I would like to open for Q&A from the audience. There is our seat reserved for you. Please, you first, and then you. I collect some questions, and then the whole panel can reply.
Just try.
Yeah, I can speak. Thank you. So I'm Nadira Rajepi from Roma Entrepreneurship Development Initiative. So I have a question to Ms. Eva. In your presentation, you mentioned that economic development cannot happen without environmental development, which I totally agree. But looking at the waste management system, which is very much underdeveloped in Western Balkan countries, we have a large portion of informal Roma waste collectors. So I was wondering what would be the role of Roma waste collectors in the process of environmental development and economic development, and what steps and actions would be taken, and if there are any discussions happening while designing the policy measures, actions, and strategies related to the transitioning towards political, environmental, and economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. Then the next question was here in the first row.
If you allow me a short comment about your question, case of Albania.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Lutfi Dervish. I'm a journalist coming from Tirana, Albania. You tried to get an answer for the coupling of tourism with environment. Well, Albania has a very long story, love story, like a telenovela with environment. First, it tried to marry with the agriculture. A marriage consumed in the countryside, but the crops never bloomed. And now they're trying to tie the knot with tourism, as if the trees will start booking vacation in the beaches. And the result of this honeymoon now is not consumed in the green paradise, but in the concrete jungle in the coast, and unfortunately, in the near future, perhaps in the only island that we have. Now it's a simple question. So we talk, we need to do two things at the same time in the Balkan. On one hand, to protect the environment, and on the other hand, the need to have economic growth. I mean, what's the key challenge to keep that balance? That's the question.
Okay, thank you. So this civil society forum is full with metaphors of love and marriage. Please.
Thank you. I'm Katarina Tadic. I come from the European Fund for the Balkans. And in my question, first, I would like to refer to the, so we have a description of this panel in the agenda. And then the last question is how can grassroots movements and CSOs play a role in effectively promoting environmental protection in the region? And I would now speak about the case of Serbia. So I think that 10 or 15 years ago, civil society in Serbia was really looking forward to the opening of the chapter 27, which was the chapter on the environmental protection, because that was seen as an opportunity to solve many challenges in this area and in this field. However, I'm not sure that the situation is the same now 10, 15 years later. I think that many movements, many civil society organizations are actually do not see EU and member states as necessarily allies in this field. And I would say that this process culminated now with the Rio Tinto project and with announced lithium mining. So in the last few months, between 40 and 60 activists or environmental activists who were protesting against this mine across Serbia were arrested or detained by our government. We didn't see that the EU or member states said anything, so basically they were completely quiet. So here are other colleagues from the civil society, but I would say that we feel very abandoned and that we feel now very lonely in this fight, and that democracy was traded for lithium and and the environment is basically traded for lithium in Serbia. And I think it's not difficult to understand why it's not in our interest. First, we don't have any trust that our institution can actually ensure the protection of these environmental standards. We have so many other environmental problems that we see that this will only further accelerate all these environmental issues. And third, I would say it's very simple. Lithium is used for electric vehicles. We don't use electric vehicles. Like in Serbia, like in any country in the Balkans, we come to Germany, to Switzerland, and to Austria to buy some 10 years old used cars. And so this debate doesn't really resonate with citizens and with the population in Serbia. So, and here today we heard many times how it's good to have civil society included, and that we always need to hear both sides. So my question would be for Mrs. Kracht. So can you imagine that there is a similar lithium project in, for example, Germany that is supported by the EU and other countries, but that there is such an opposition from the citizens against that project, and that still government decides to go against it using the level of repression that we see currently in Serbia? So thank you.
Thanks a lot for all those three questions. Should we start just from the last?
The easiest one. Yeah, that is indeed a difficult. Can you hear me? Yeah, a difficult issue. Well, I already hinted early on that we have a bit of an intra-environmental issues problem also within the EU, where now there is a lot of focus on the energy transition and less of a focus on nature protection. So over the past few years, for example, and this is continuing, we've been quite successful at defining new rules for accelerating renewable energies, energy infrastructure, all these things that we need, sometimes at the cost of nature protection. And there's certainly, I mean, from an environmental perspective, probably we have been following this with a rather kind of a critical eye, and are worried sometimes. And this is kind of from an environmental perspective part of that challenge, that of course lithium is needed for the energy transition, for the transition in the transport sector. And of course, you're right, this is not for everybody at the moment, the e-vehicles, but we are likely to all move towards that technology. This is also geopolitics, of course, and I think it's understandable that we want to reduce within Euro dependencies on some countries that pose their own problems. At the same time, this is a risk to nature and also to people, and there is a second dimension to that, which is very important, and you stress that. This is also about the people, about democracy, and about how people are being treated. So this is a serious and difficult question, and I don't think I have the expertise to really go into all the elements of that. What I can tell you is that because we know that our chancellor has also been in touch with your president on this issue, we have offered, and this is just a little bit of help, but that's what we can offer from our ministry's side, to not only push forward the bigger environmental debate within the Berlin process, but also more specifically to provide technical assistance in making sure that the environmental regulations and necessities are being respected in this project, and very importantly, including a component that would make sure that civil society is also being heard in this.
Yeah, I mean, being the only representative from the German side, thank you for answering this question. It's clear that there cannot be a very satisfying answer. The general question is, and there was a lot of dissatisfaction and frustration already in the room why EU is silent about these very repressive stances from the Serbian government that just reflects the authoritarian style of government. So it's a severe democracy development problem next to all the environmental problems that we see. There was 2 more questions on the Roma waste collection, on how is this seen, how is this considered by EU, and also the balance of agriculture, like tourism, agriculture,
Economy, environmental protection and the economy was the balance, or what was the question?
Can I help?
Please go ahead.
I think that I understood. So basically, so you mentioned there are shifting focuses on development from first agricultural, now use of land for tourism. And what are the threats and how to solve that?
That was a joke. The question is, everybody's talking that we need to protect the environment, but also we need to develop the economy. And the question is, what's the key challenge to keep that balance?
Yeah. So. Yeah, to not only complain about marginalizing environmental protection, but also see how can we develop a proper economy. Would you like to answer on that?
Yes, just shortly. Maybe as example from Macedonia, but as well since I am familiar with the environmental protection in the region, even in Albania. So I will say a few words about wastewater treatment plants, which are a big consumer of energy from one side, and from the other side is an investment. They're big investment. So maybe the balance. What is the challenge? The challenge is challenge. The challenge is economy. First, we are trying to impose or to the contractors that every wastewater treatment plants, as I said, they are a big consumer of energy, should be energy efficient. Energy efficient means that they will invest in part of the aeration, which is one of the biggest consumer in the wastewater treatment plants, or they will plan and solar panels. So according to EU recommendations and criteria, till please, maybe I will be wrong with the years, but till 2035, the wastewater treatment plants should be 70–50% energy efficient, until 2045, 100%, which means that with the investment in the environment, with building wastewater treatment plants, we are investing in the environment with energy efficient wastewater treatment plants. We for sure have economy development because they are investment, and from the other side we are saving energy and protected environment. So one of the issue, or this is a small point maybe in all the area, but as example, I think it is very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we can pose the balance question also to Ms. Chinay, if you are still with us. And I could also add to that, because of course for Albania the tourism sector is just also a huge chance. Of course, it's really trending. But I mean, I don't know if you can hear us, Ms. Chinay. Are you still with us? I don't want to pose the question into the dark. There you are, very good. So as we are having next year in Berlin the International Tourism Affair with Albania as a host country, so what could be the expectation then for for showing Albania's capability also for a responsible and sustainable tourism in this regard? Did you hear our questions?
Can you hear me? Because I hear echo all the time.
Maybe you speak without your video on. Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah. Maybe there's. In the meanwhile, we have one more question, but then maybe two more questions, and then we should sum up.
Well, this year is expected to be very important for the Ministry of Tourism and Environment. Of course, very challenging, but
sorry,
I hear.
The question for the Roma community was not answered.
We get to that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Please go ahead, Ms. Ginay.
I cannot speak because I hear the voice multiple times. So.
Okay, so then this doesn't seem to work out. Yeah, the Roma community question, the Roma waste collection question to you, maybe?
Well, I'd be glad if people from the region with more expertise on the region could maybe say something on the specific perspective of the Roma informal waste pickers. But generally, I agree that this is an important issue to keep in mind, and it's basically a question of the social issues and of the just transition, if you want to call it that way. There are many aspects to the just transition. I was reminded of the international negotiations on a plastics treaty at the moment, where, of course, again and again, the issue of informal waste workers comes up, quite rightly so, and it's something I don't think it's easy to solve, and I don't know what would be an appropriate solution on the ground, but it's definitely important to look at these issues. And there's a whole lot of other just transition issues. The debate we had in Germany about our heating law, I'm not sure if you followed that, has a lot to do with social concerns of certain parts of the population. Or I would argue that the farmers' protests we saw all over Europe at some point also are about social concerns of certain people affected by environmental rules. So we need to place more emphasis on these social questions as we go along in the transition, because things do change and they can be very challenging for certain people.
Thank you. We are running out of time. So, Alexander, if you would like to have a very last word, or anyone from the panel who wants, please go ahead.
I also like to come back to the question posed by Mr. Dervishi, because I think it's a very important question, and that's also the representative from the Ministry of Environment. She mentioned this importance of finding the balance, and the balance is usually easier to be found once you have opposing parties that can communicate with each other, but it's much harder to find once the counterpart cannot really speak your language. I'm sure that if pelicans or flamingos were asked about the Vlora airport and about it being a proper investment that will help the economy and respect at the same time environmental issues, I'm sure that they would not see any type of balance in that, or any type of positive development for them. So it's definitely not an easy thing to talk about balance, but what I think the region, Albania, but also the region is unique when it comes to a European context, is the incredibly high value that it has on biodiversity, the very rich nature that it has, and that is exactly what we can offer to Europe. I mean, we don't need to replicate unsustainable models of development that have been proven elsewhere to lead nowhere, to lead to environmental destruction, to lead to social issues, to issues with local inhabitants, and so on. I mean, we can gain that experience that from Central and Western European countries, what has been done wrong, and put it to our advantage, and not do the same mistakes that were done perhaps 40, 50, or even 100 years ago by other countries, when also environmental awareness was much lower than it is today. With the information that we know now about climate change, about the biodiversity crisis, making similar decisions or even worse decisions about development to the detriment of nature, it's not anymore ignorance. It's like being bad by purpose, you know. So it's yeah.
Let's keep that in mind as a very good conclusion. Thank you, Alexander. Thanks to the whole panel. Thanks also for your interest in the audience. Yeah, and I think the next panel is just following en route. Okay.